Okay, welcome back to another episode of the podcast, everybody. Tonight's a very special episode. We have another guest on, and tonight our guest is Jackie Hendrickson, who is a registered dietitian with a master's from Utah State University. She lives in Ogden, Utah, with her husband and her son, and is a big fan of running, visiting the dinosaur park, cooking, camping, and watching movies with her family. So I'm very excited to have her on tonight to talk about some of the things that we're going to be going into regarding running, diet, nutrition, and some of those other topics that I've brought up a few times on this podcast. So, Jackie, welcome to the podcast. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me. It's a great opportunity.
Well, it's great to have you on, and to break the ice, I have a little question for you. So, if you were an athlete with a walkout song, what would it be and why?
Awesome. So I feel like I have a real life example of this. When I was in college running for Utah State, we hosted the Mountain West Conference Championships at our track, and I was doing the 10K. And for those of you that don't know, the 10K is held on the track. So that is 25 laps around a 400-meter track. So it's a long time.
Ooh, yeah, that's rough.
Yeah. So they let us, all the 10K runners from Utah State, pick one song that we wanted to play during the race. And so we got to pick our own motivational song. And mine was from Chainsmokers, Something Just Like This. I just like the beat of it, the positive tune. So that was my walkout song, I guess you could say.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's great. That was always my favorite thing to do when we would play volleyball was we'd have warm-up songs, right? And it would get everyone really excited. That's a great song, by the way, from the Chainsmokers, but I'm kind of on the opposite end. I like funny songs when I have sports things. So I'd probably pick Careless Whisper by George Michael, just to make the other opponents a little upset, be like, what is this guy doing playing jazz? So that's awesome. Thanks for sharing that. And let's get into to your background a little bit, if you're all right with that. So let's start at the very beginning. Where'd you grow up? Did you have certain hobbies as a kid? We can start there.
Awesome. So I grew up in Lehigh, Utah, and I was just a normal kid, just played with my friends on the street. One of our neighborhood friends, her mom had a gym in her basement. And so all of us took gymnastics, and we'd watch Nadia. And it was about the gymnast that scored a perfect 10, So that was our dream until I was about 10. And then I did swim team and eventually found running. So
awesome. So very active as a kid.
Yeah.
Very sure. Cool. When you were playing in the streets with your friends, anything particular? Me and my friends, we'd go ding dong ditch or TP houses and stuff. So a little more on the negative side of doing things like that. But what were you and your friends doing, if you remember?
Oh, I remember there was one weird game we played, and it was just a make-believe game, right? But we'd run from house to house and have different trees that were different locations. I don't know.
It's always the best. I mean, imagination as a kid, that's what makes everything great, right?
Exactly.
And still talking about your childhood, do you have a favorite memory that comes to your mind? I don't know, maybe go into favorite memory or anything like that.
Sure. One favorite memory from childhood with friends is probably riding my bike to swim team with a couple of friends from the neighborhood. And we lived at the top of a hill. And for those of you familiar with Lehigh, it's Airport Drive, right? And so we'd come down that hill, and it's a big hill, and coast all the way down to the Lehigh outdoor pool. And we'd make it a game, and then we'd ride all the way back up. And that's one of my favorite memories for sure.
That's pretty scary. I've done the same thing on a longboard in California. My uncle, he lives on a giant hill, and he's always like, yeah, just go on a longboard and cruise down there, and it gets pretty intense. So yeah, I mean, don't mess around with hills.
Yeah.
Well, awesome. Do you have any favorite books that you've read, any podcasts you listen to? I mean, you said you love watching movies with your family, so maybe favorite movies.
Sure. So I would say the last, 8-ish years or so, my favorite books have been just school books and books pertaining to my career, So some of those favorites are Intuitive Eating by Evelyn Tribole and Elise Reich. And I also love Roar by Dr. Stacy Sims. More Than a Body by Lexi and Lindsay Kite. Those are the ones I've read most recently. As far as like fictional books go, The Help is probably one of my favorite books I've ever read. Yeah. But it's been a long time since I've read a book just for pleasure.
Yeah, no, I totally get that. I mean, it takes a lot of effort to sit down and pull something out when you have like your phone with everything that's like right there. You can just catch up on social and all that. So, but it sounds very interesting. I'm excited to talk to you a little bit more about a topic you just brought up, which is diet and self-image and body and all that stuff. But before we do that, I'd also like to ask you, is there one person in your life who impacted you in a positive way? Maybe you can expand on that a little bit. If there's someone who was a mentor or, got you started in your fascination with diets or nutrition or running or anything like that.
That's a really good question. And I don't know that I can pinpoint just one person, but I'll try. I guess someone that really inspired me with running, we'll go with that one. Her name is Natalie Shields, and she was just like 2 grades older than me in high school. And she had a similar body type to me, which, just encouraged me that I could be good like her, because she just kicked butt in high school, broke a ton of records, and really made a lot of improvements. And, looking at her training, because she would post it on this blog called Fast Running Blog. And it was just astounding to see how much hard work she put into the results that she got. Right. So it was like, okay, I can do this. I can improve too, if I put the same kind of work into it. And so she was a big inspiration for me to be able to be like, yes, I can see myself in her and I can do that as well. Never got quite as fast as her, but
well, I mean, you're pretty quick. We'll touch on this a little bit later in the podcast as well, but you have a very impressive mile time. I was doing some research prior to us having this conversation, and I was like, man, that's I think a good minute and a half off my fastest mile. So nice work there. You keep me in the dust, but yeah, thanks for sharing that. And just going back to having influential people in your life, I really think that's one of the things that provides value to people, right? Is having these people around you to support you and help you with your goals or whatever you're pursuing. So that's awesome that you had that experience at such a young age. And I mean, you're doing it now for other people. You're coaching them and helping them achieve their goals. And I'm sure you're leaving a positive impact on them as well. So yeah, hopefully. It's full circle.
Yes, for sure. And I should add that obviously, like any coach that I've had and parents have been obviously huge influence as well. Just trying to think of something that answered your question, but No,
I appreciate the answer. And of course, like you can always look back on coaches and parents and those really important pillars in people's lives. But, there's always someone else that needs a quick shout out as well. And last kind of personal question before we talk about, getting after it and some of the things that you're going after. I have a scenario for you. You have the afternoon to spend with your husband and your kid. What are you guys doing?
This is really easy. We're in the mountains on a hike somewhere exploring.
Yeah. Awesome. Where's your favorite mountain, like mountain range or any hikes like that?
All my favorite mountain is Mount Timpanogos, but being in Ogden, it's hard not to love Ben Lomond and North Fork Park, Wheeler Canyon, Snow Basin Trails. They're all incredible. Mm-hmm.
That's awesome. And honestly, that's one of my favorite things to do with my family as well. We're huge backpackers. And so we go to the High Sierras in California. We try and go once a year, just like a week-long backpacking trip. But there's something about being in the mountains with your family. It's pretty special. So I completely agree with you on that one. And now shifting topics to, a little bit more about the professional side of what you're doing and some of the things that you are going after. But I really want to start with you being a dietitian, and that is a very rigorous study and a field to go into with so many different opinions in the world of, carnivore this or keto. There's so many people who are giving you ideas. It's got to drive you crazy to be a dietitian, understand what the body needs, and then hear these like fad diets or, some of these things. I'd actually like to get your opinion on that, if that's okay. I know it's deviating a little bit from our outline, but like, what do you think about these trendy diets that pop up? What's your opinion on those?
I mean, I think you just said it well, that they're trendy, right?
Yeah.
And if we look at the history of, maybe the last 50 years, we can see patterns in history where, eggs were bad, fat was bad. I remember
Right.
my grandma and my mom saying that in the 90s, they would have a whole package of licorice because it was a non-fat food and they'd think that was healthy for lunch, right? That's obviously not balanced and blah, blah, blah. So no fat then. Now it's
Sounds like a great lunch though.
right. Yeah. Tasty for sure. But when it comes down to it, we always come back to the basics of we need to have a balanced diet. We need carbohydrates. We need proteins. We need fats. We need that balance. And so anything that's super trendy is probably too good to be true, I would say.
Yeah. And I'd probably agree with you because I've tried some of the diets and you only last a long time because it's like, this is not sustainable. And then you just go back to either eating a bad diet or figuring out, okay, I need to balance it out a little bit. So
exactly. As a dietitian, we're looking at your health long-term, right? Where's your health going to be in 10 years from now? Or the things that I'm helping you with going to help you with that, right?
Yeah.
And, when we're looking at these trendy diets and some of the research that is positive about them, it's, 3 months of an intervention or even something smaller, like 6 weeks. But then any research article that goes longer than that, 1 year, 5 years, does not show benefits of the diet, right? So you may be able to have very short-term success with some of these trendy things or severe caloric restriction, but where is that going to put you 5 years from now, 10 years from now? That's what us as dietitians are trying to help you be able to create, are the sustainable habits that are going to last your whole life.
Yeah. And I love that because it's about long-term living really and living a healthy life. I don't know if you know who Dr. Rhonda Patrick is, but she's one of my favorite nutritionists to listen to. She just promotes that same message of it's about the long term. Like if carnivore is working for you and you're feeling great on it and your body's functioning properly and you're doing it for 3 years, then that's great. Your body could respond different to someone else's. Like I wouldn't be able to do that. My biological makeup wouldn't really do well on an all meat diet. But yeah, thanks for sharing that. Cause I think a lot of people hear these diets and they're like, oh, I need to go try that if I want to lose weight. That's the one I need to do. And oftentimes it's not the case. It's just reviewing what you're currently eating and then making small improvements based on that.
Totally.
But let's take a step back and I'd like to ask just how you made the decision to become a dietitian, where that started and how you ultimately decided that this was the career path you wanted to go down.
Yeah. So, as I mentioned, I was always involved in sports, and I think it's a natural interest for a lot of athletes to be interested in nutrition because you feel it immediately, right? You feel those effects. So I'd say from a young age, I was interested in nutrition, and, my family was pretty health conscious as well. So, like around 7th grade, I feel like I started, wanting to cook more and find ways to make different recipes and things like that. And so it was always a passion of mine to cook and be interested in healthy eating. And so I didn't really understand what a dietitian was or anything, but my senior year of high school, I went to like a career fair type of thing where we'd go around to different rooms and hear a dietitian or a carpenter or, all these different professions talk, and they could share what they do. And in the dietitian one, she was an employee for Blendtec, the blender company. And, I was like, what? A dietitian could do that? Like help make recipes for a blender company? That's cool. And
Will It Blend? They also made all those videos too. That's how I remember Blendtec was the guy who would like blend phones. But anyway, sorry to interrupt there.
Yeah, probably not a dietitian blending the phone, but
no.
Anyway, so once I realized that I could potentially work in a hospital or with sport, like with athletes or in a community setting or a nonprofit setting, because those are all interests of mine. My dad worked nonprofit. My little sister spent a lot of time in the hospital growing up. And so I was really interested in working in those two areas to start out with. So I started it, loved it, and then didn't look back in college.
That's awesome. And it's great that you found that passion and then you just kept going with it. And you found certain ways that you could apply it to create a career from it. That's one thing that I try and tell people is get creative in your passion. Like if it's something that you think you can make a job out of, or there's certain things like the person at Blend Tech who's a dietitian that helps come up with these recipes. You can always find something. You just have to get a little creative. And it's great to hear that you were able to do that. I do have a question. What's one of the most common misconceptions about what a dietitian does?
Meal plans.
Okay.
The biggest one. People are just like, so you're going to put me on a meal plan, right? It's like, well, actually, I want to give you the tools so that you can have, the skills to make your own meal plan for the rest of your life instead of me just dictating what you're doing day in and day out, because that's not sustainable, right? Yeah. So I'd say that's a big one. I think another one is that dietitians only help you with weight loss, or that maybe they're going to be very judgmental of your food. I know for me going into my dietetics degree, I thought I was going to learn a lot different things than I actually did learn, or come out being very different. I went into it very much so health conscious, health oriented, and not that I'm not as well, but my perspective of what health is very different than what I thought it was then. Then it was black and white, eat this, don't eat that. I think lots of people think that a dietitian is going to tell you yes and no to lots of foods, but really it's all foods fit. Here's why they fit, and here are the different places that they fit better in your diet and in your day.
Awesome. So it's more of a job to help promote healthier habits for people and a better relationship with food, right? That's kind of what it sounds like.
Absolutely. And helping people personalize it for themselves as well.
Awesome. Yeah. I mean, I know it's definitely a topic that is becoming more and more important in, I think, at least in the US. Like there's so many unhealthy food choices all around. Like you don't have to go very far. Half the foods, more than half, are probably processed to a degree that we don't really want to know. So yeah, it's important to develop these habits and learn what food makes you feel right. And unfortunately, I think along with like social media, some of our food choices, America is one of the highest rates of people who develop an eating disorder, as doing a little bit of research, but you can probably correct me if I'm wrong. But America has a very high rate of like young females, but then also males who develop eating disorders. And I know that's one thing that a dietitian helps with, correct?
Absolutely.
So from your experience and like some of the things that you've read, what are some of the most common causes of someone who develops an eating disorder? And I know there's thousands of different kinds, from like, binge eating, or I don't know what the one where you purge is called, but there's a lot. And maybe you can just touch on some of the most common causes that create some of these things.
Mm-hmm, totally. So it's definitely a multifactorial, very complex situation, eating disorders and developing one. So I'd say some off the top of my head, genetics definitely play a role. Some people are more susceptible to developing an eating disorder than others. We don't necessarily have exact explanations for that, but definitely something for sure. Along with that, we could say personality traits, people that have more type A personalities, perfectionistic qualities, which are very good in so many ways, right? The most motivated and driven people are that way. But it can also lead to some disordered eating habits. Just the society that we're in, the pressures, the social pressure, the thin ideal, especially in the Eurocentric world of, tall, thin, beautiful, that kind of thing, that it's very tied to our worth. That definitely has something to play in. Family life and friend life. definitely parents that go on diets and are constantly talking about weight and their body in negative ways, it's correlated that their children will also have similar issues. And, for anyone listening that has a child with an eating disorder, do not blame yourself 100% because there are so many things that go into this, but, it is a factor for sure. And then I'd say different things that you're involved in. So, most of the athletes that I work with or the clients that I work with are athletes with eating disorders or disordered eating, a large portion of them. And just being in sports that have, where there is a sports benefit and athletic performance benefit to having a certain body type or a certain body fat percentage, whether it's just because it's an aesthetic sport like gymnastics or ice skating, or, you're not wearing very many clothes while you're competing, volleyball, swim team, all those kinds of things, you're more likely to develop an eating disorder that way. And, lots of that can be from misconceptions about what makes you a good athlete as well. And so much of it is you associate a certain one type of body type with athletic performance, when in reality it's so varying. There are lots of different body types that can be successful, but yeah.
And a follow-up question to that, do you see eating disorders more common in people who pursue athletics, or just like people in general, like who come to you for help?
Oh, I mostly work with athletes because that's my background. So in my experience, I'd say athletes for sure, but I work with people all over the place that have very different athletic goals, activity goals. Maybe they're not even active at all, but disordered eating is rampant. Even if it's not a diagnosable eating disorder like anorexia, bulimia, orthorexia, disordered eating is on that spectrum as well, where you can still improve your relationship with food in your body and have a better quality of life.
Yeah. Like even from my athletic career, I guess if you can call it a career, but I played volleyball for about 6 years in high school, and throughout high school, but it was always like, we were always told you need to be jacking up the protein. You need to be eating don't eat unhealthy, unrefined or refined carbs. You need to be eating like from the source. You need to be eating rice and all these things. So you're told from a very early age, these foods are bad and these are good. And you need to be eating the good foods in order to feel right and perform. And, hearing that from like a coach, or if we had a nutritionist, you're like, okay, well, he knows or she knows what is best for me, so I better listen to him. Right. So yeah, I can definitely see how those can develop. And as you mentioned, it's a very complex situation. So I'm not trying to like make it light at all, because I know many people struggle with this. And I was actually reading on the Mayo Clinic's website about 75% of eating disorders are they are developed and they take place within like the ages, I think it was 14 to 19 is what the website was saying. And I think a lot of it's probably because of some of the things that you touched on, whether that's influences from family, personality traits, social media, I'm sure is a huge thing nowadays with comparison and all that. So yeah, very, very interesting. But again, I know it's a struggle, and I know some people recognize that it is a problem that they're facing, and some unfortunately do not. But for someone that does understand that, they're trying to work on their own relationship with food, trying to overcome their own eating disorder, what advice would you give someone in that situation, if any?
Oh, absolutely. I'd say to not give up. It's a hard road to take, that path of recovery. And, you're going to have ups and downs along the way, but I like to look at progress, not as a straight line of progress, from, the bottom of the mountain to the top of the mountain, but you're going to have some ups and downs along the way, kind of like a roller coaster that eventually takes you to the top. Right. And so you're going to experience some really good weeks, some good months, and you're going to be like, I've got this. I want to change and I want to do this. And then you're going to also experience some dips, and that's very normal. But if you keep going, you're eventually going to end up better off. So I'd say keep at it and don't give up on yourself either. I think a lot of people tend to feel like if they are going to get treatment, get help, that they're going to give up a part of themselves. For an athlete, maybe they are scared that they're not going to be able to perform as well as they'd like to. Or, anyone else feels like when your worth is tied to the way you look, that if they change the way they look, and it's going to change too drastically, that all of a sudden they're not worth anything.
Yeah.
Anyways, those things aren't true. You can come back as an athlete. You're going to be stronger. The more you feel better, right? And as a person, you're going to be able to be a better person if you are able to be more present with the people around you and be able to have the energy to focus and, put that energy into productive areas of your life. And so I'd say don't give up.
Yeah. And I love that because it aligns pretty well with the message that I promote of start small. Like, don't put too much pressure on yourself at the beginning and celebrate when you do have those wins. And you mentioned, I didn't know that recovery takes months. You said months in your answer. Is that usually it takes years? Wow. Like what's the typical timeline for someone in that recovery stage?
It really depends on where you're at on the spectrum of this disordered eating disorders, but it's very, very common for it to take years. And it's also common for you never to feel like you're fully recovered. Recovery is more of, okay, I'm going to have all the tools in my back pocket to be able to know how to combat these thoughts when they come, right?
Yeah.
And those thoughts and, behaviors and triggers will become less and less frequent the more that you're there, but you always have to kind of be on top of it to some extent. It would be my explanation.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you sharing that. And if anyone is going through something like this, like just like Jackie said, hang in there because you'll get through and just celebrate your wins. Realize that you're human. You're going to not have slip ups, but you'll have some negative thoughts come up and just realize that's normal. So keep pushing through. And yeah, thanks for sharing that. Cause I do think it's a topic that's not addressed. And when it is addressed, there's like a stigma behind it of people should be, not, what's the word? Like people oftentimes are embarrassed by this kind of thing. And I don't think it's anything to be embarrassed about. It's just, let's get you the help that you need to get over this. Yeah, so definitely don't be embarrassed. Let's figure it out. But shifting topics, and you've mentioned a few things that we'll probably go into with this, like fueling your body and all that stuff. I really want to talk to you a little bit about running because you have some very impressive, things that you've done with going after running, like your mile time, some of the races that you've run. But where did that all start? When did you start deciding to love to run? Because the majority of people do not like running. I mean, it's a hard thing to love. So interested to hear where that started and how you took to it so well.
Sure. So it definitely started with my parents. I think my mom ran her first marathon when I was 18 months old and was always a runner from then on out. Would just wake up at the butt crack of dawn and, come home before we woke up even. But my dad started getting into running as well. And we were getting a little bit older. And so they'd sign us up for those kids races. And the first race that my brother and I did was just a half mile. And I remember going to the track and running around the track thinking that it was just so terrible. And we actually have a picture of us and we just look like death. And we, done around the track. So, a little bit of a rough start, I guess. But when I was in junior high, I started running with my mom and dad a little bit more, like on the weekends when I didn't have swim practice, and started enjoying it more. And I had a goal when I was 13 to run 13 miles since I was 13 years old. And I wouldn't necessarily recommend that for every 13-year-old, but
that's intense.
It was a lot of fun. And I didn't, do anything crazy hard. I just run one time a week with my parents and swim the other days. But it was a lot of fun. So I'd say that's when I started to love it.
Yeah, that's really cool. I mean, congrats on 13 when you're 13. I just ran about 2 months ago. I ran my first half marathon for the first time.
Awesome.
And I'm doing another one in January in Carlsbad. I'm pretty excited about. But I mean, I was 24 when I did it, and I was like, man, I feel like I'm on top of the world. So I can't imagine what you felt like when you were 13. That's awesome. But continuing down this, Is there like a particular reason you were attracted to this kind of like discipline? Like, is it just you just like being outside, or like what caused you to really feel that, desire and love for running?
Sure. So I think I love, just with my personality, I love the sports where I can take full control of how much effort I put into it and be able to see the result, right? Playing a team sport like basketball or something, you could be a really great basketball player, but not really know it or be able to see it because maybe your team isn't there, right?
Yeah.
Or maybe your teammates don't care about working hard. And so I really love that aspect of it, that I could work hard in my practices and I could see results. And I started loving that in swim team. So running was a natural transition for that. And, I was planning on being a swimmer in high school. Like that was my big passion, but I did cross country and track. Like I did track in junior high and then cross country my freshman year of high school. And I was like, I'm actually pretty good at this. Maybe I should switch over because I'm better at running than I am at swimming. And maybe I could actually have a future. And then the real tipping point probably was the social aspect. All of my best friends were runners. You just find the best people in distance runners, in my opinion, but obviously that's a biased one. So
Yeah,
that's,
no, and I would probably agree with you. Everyone who I've met that is a runner, I think is very humble because they realize how hard it is, and like it takes a lot on your body, and you get humbled pretty quickly if you're trying to go after some of these lofty goals. But I want to address a few milestones that you've accomplished with your running career, and the first being your 5 minute 7 second mile time. That is unbelievable. So maybe you can tell the listeners like what your training was like for this, what your diet was like, and how long it took you to reach that time. 'Cause that's not typical. That's very impressive.
yeah. So it's kind of funny that you picked that time out of all the times that I've done, just because the last time I raced a mile was a long time ago. So that was my junior year in high school. And that was the first year that I decided to follow Natalie Shields' training and, really bumped up my mileage. I got up to 60 miles a week as my peak for
Oh
like
wow.
2 weeks. I held that. And, that was a big deal when I was a junior in high school. And worked really hard in my workouts. Me and my friend, Emily, we were good teammates and we'd just do everything together. So we were kind of on our own. Our team was a little bit smaller, but we decided that we were going to take matters into our own hands and really see what we could do, reach our potential. So anyways, that 507 mile was a special one. I was like doing well in workouts, and my races that season were okay, but I was finishing mostly around a 5:15, which wasn't quite what I knew I could do. And then I had this big breakout race at the BYU Invitational and ran a 5:07 and had a kick in the last 400. And I'm not a really good kicker. I'm not as fast. I'm way better at the marathon than I am at the mile, kind of a runner. So, it was a fun race, a good memory for sure.
Yeah, that's awesome. And again, congrats on that. I don't think that you kind of just glazed over how impressive that is. That's fast. That's really crazy. But you said you're more of a marathon runner, so I'm curious, how many marathons have you run?
I started doing marathons after my son was born in 2020, and I think I've done maybe 5 or 6.
Oh wow.
So yeah.
All of them 26.2 miles?
Yeah.
Very cool. Yeah, my mom, she was a marathon runner when I was growing up, and so I'd always look to her and her example, and like the time and effort that she would put into training, eating the right foods and all that. It was impressive even when I was a little kid. Like I recognized it. Like she's putting in the effort. She knows what she's doing. So you doing that and going through life and raising a family, being a dietitian, that's impressive that you were able to run 5 since your son. How old is your son?
He's 3.
Okay, so hey, there you go. That's even more impressive. But yeah, that's awesome. And now you've kind of made this shift, it seems like, to helping coach people, right? So you're a runner coach, and with that, I'm sure you've taught a lot of lessons. You've gained some more insight on the sport, but I'd love to hear some of the lessons that you've learned from coaching other people, and maybe maybe like seeing them succeed and what that's taught you. If you can go into that a little bit.
Sure. I think one of the best things I've learned that wasn't necessarily a surprise, but I'm really glad it's true, is that it doesn't matter what pace my athletes are running, as long as they are giving their all. And I know that they've done their very best. So my husband and I actually had the chance to coach at Roy High School. I also do private coaching, but this Roy High School example is probably a little bit more relevant what I'm trying to say here. But our cute athletes, they bless their hearts, we're not the fastest ones. But we had 2 girls qualify individually for state last year, which was just an amazing accomplishment for them, right? Based on where they were coming from. And we get to the state championship, and I realized that I'm cheering for them, and they're way far off the front pack, right? Like they're in no man's land. And I'm just like, wow, no one knows how good these girls are doing right now. Like they are running their PRs. They are giving their very best. I know that they're working hard out here and they're accomplishing good things, but nobody knows that. And I'm so proud of them still, right? I'm just as proud of them as I would be as if, we had a girl that was winning state, kind of a thing. And so that's been one of my favorite things to learn as a coach, is that really it's about the effort that my athletes put in that, brings you satisfaction and success. And that's one of my favorite things about running.
Yeah, that's great. And I'm sure that ranges, like you probably coach people who are really fast, and you probably coach people who, like you mentioned, might be a little on the slower side, but you can tell that they're putting in the effort. And that's actually a quote. So when I signed up for my first half marathon in March, my mom, she said, it doesn't matter how fast you go as long as you finish. Like just sign up, and if you're going to commit and finish and put in the effort. So that's what I try to tell people as well, is like, you don't have to be the fastest, you don't have to be the smartest. Just give it your all. Just try your best, and you'll be really surprised at what you can accomplish and teach yourself. So
absolutely.
Yeah, that's an amazing lesson to learn. Any others that come to top of mind? If not, no worries.
Yeah. I think another one that kind of goes right along with that is that when you put effort into something, you will get out what you're hoping to. Maybe not in the timeline that you're hoping it will, right? I think that's one of our biggest flaws as humans, is putting a timeline on progress.
Yeah.
When it really just takes consistency and patience. But if you do the work, you're going to get the results that you're hoping for eventually. And, time and time again, I've seen that with people I've worked with. So.
Yeah, that's awesome. And that's great to hear. And on that same note of effort and, making sure that you're putting in all you can do, is there anything that you tell your athletes or you tell yourself when they start losing motivation, or you yourself start losing a little bit of motivation to, continue practicing, or just giving it your effort, giving it your best?
Yeah. A couple things. I think honestly, one of the simplest and best things I tell myself and other people is just to give your best effort, right? If we put too high of expectations on ourselves, then I think that's when we have disappointment, right? And we obviously need to be able to talk to ourselves objectively and, set goals and things like that. But if we just have that expectation that I'm going to give my very best effort, regardless of what that is, maybe I'm not feeling the best today, but you're going to give what you have, then you can be satisfied. And I think that helps you be able to have more of a sustainable approach to training. And you can train year in and year out, and it's okay, right? We're going to have highs and lows, just like we've been talking about a couple of times this podcast, right? But you'll be able to make it through those slumps by, knowing and having confidence that you're giving your best effort. And then also finding ways to have fun with it. You've got to have fun with your training. If it's not fun, it's not worth it, right? There are a lot of things you can do that are not as intense as a marathon to maintain your health, right? And so you better find something that you enjoy. So, for me, that's running on the trails. So I make sure and incorporate trail running into my training so that I have that sense of like, I'm in my happy place, right? And this is why I do this. It doesn't matter if I'm running my fastest times right now or not. I do this because I love it, and it's something that brings me joy every single day.
Yeah, I know I probably don't look like it, but me and my brother, we really bond over weightlifting and that kind of pursuit and that passion. And I don't know. I mentioned it a couple times on this podcast, but every Thanksgiving and Christmas Eve, we have something that we call Hell for the Holidays, which is, it's kind of ridiculous, but we will like max out on our deadlifts, our squats, and our bench press. And um, it's the most intense exercise that we do all year. We're just trying to give it our all because we'll do like circuits and all that stuff during it as well. So like physically it's pretty demanding on us, but we're just having so much fun the entire time. We're, like you mentioned, almost in our happy place in like a grungy little gym. But it's just fun. Like, make it fun. If there's something that you don't like doing, don't do it and go find something else. I mean, I think often it's similar to diets, right? Like people are like, if I want to lose a weight, I have to go on the treadmill for an hour. Like that is just, that's one of, in my opinion, that's one of the worst workouts. And I love running just because I would get so bored, just same place, just, stationary running. So
I can
yeah,
ditto.
you can do it. Really?
I said I can ditto that.
Oh, I was going to say, whoa, that's impressive. But yeah, just find something that you love. And I took this quote from your LinkedIn, so I hope this doesn't put you on the spot, but it's from your LinkedIn, like I mentioned, and you said, my purpose and passion as a registered dietitian is to help you achieve your athletic potential through proper fueling and nutrition. I focused on intuitive eating principles to help you develop a healthier relationship with food and your body. And sorry, I kind of read that all sporadic, but I really love what you say about, I focus on intuitive eating principles. And this might be just a total topic change, but if there's someone who's looking to be a better intuitive eater, and for those of you who don't know what intuitive eating is, it's, correct me if I'm wrong, Jackie, because you're the dietitian here, but it's just listening to your body and eating when you feel like you're hungry, and eating the right foods that are going to help you, like you said, reach your goals and develop a better relationship with food and your body. So if someone was looking to develop some of those principles and get better at intuitive eating, is there anything that you'd tell them?
Sure. So I think you just very briefly described intuitive eating in a very quick sentence, right? And it's not inaccurate, but I think sometimes people get hung up on the eat what I want when I want kind of, and feel like, oh, there's no way I could do this. But there are a lot of other principles, such as, we talk about practical hunger cues, and a practical hunger cue is something where you're supposed to eat even if you're not super feeling it. It's an act of self-care, or maybe you just finished a hard workout and you're really not in the mood to eat, but your body needs some nourishment, right? And so there is some objectivity to intuitive eating as well, and just learning how to better cope with emotions and stress and everything, so that food isn't your only coping mechanism. And then it also, the very last principle of intuitive eating is gentle nutrition. So it doesn't mean that we throw nutrition out the window. It's definitely health focused and health centered. And I think lots of people feel like, oh, if I do intuitive eating, I'm just going to eat donuts and chips all day because that's what I feel like eating, right? When in reality, your diet is going to be a lot more balanced than that, and it should be, once you incorporate all those principles. So advice to people trying to incorporate intuitive eating into their life is to make sure you understand what it is. It would be my number one recommendation. So follow a registered dietitian, that talks about it. I have a lot of stuff that I post on my Instagram page, which I think you'll link in the show notes or whatever. It's called Endura Nutrition. So, that's a resource. And then of course the book, I really like the intuitive eating workbook, specifically because it helps you kind of dissect each principle, and personalize it for yourself. So instead of just generally saying, diets don't work, it's like, okay, what diets have you tried? And what were the things that happened when you tried them? And it really helps you reflect a little bit more of a self-help thing. So I'd recommend that, and make sure you go through the whole thing, right? And don't rush it. Give yourself time and patience. Sometimes it takes time to just be able to get used to retraining your brain to think differently about food, right? We're trained trained one way growing up that, zero processed food. And then once you realize that all food is processed to some degree, then you're like, well, now what? And, just little things like that. So anyways, go through the whole thing, be patient with yourself. Hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, that's perfect. And honestly, the only other question I have for you is if there was one thing you'd want the listeners to leave with today, what would that one thing be? If there's anything else that you'd want to bring up, yeah.
Maybe to dream big, particularly if you are struggling with disordered eating or an eating disorder. There are things that you want to accomplish in this life, whether it's sports, whether it's, having a family, things of that nature. Don't be afraid to dream big and, give yourself the benefit of the doubt that you do deserve success and, give yourself that chance. So.
Awesome. Yeah. And I second that, dream big, go after the things that you, one of my favorite quotes is if your dreams don't scare you, they're not big enough. So it's like, scare yourself a little bit and then take those small steps that Jackie and I have mentioned today to get yourself on the path that, is going to help you improve and get better. So yeah, I second everything that you said. And again, I really appreciate you taking the time out of your day to be on this and to talk about some of the things that we addressed, because I think they're very important topics to talk about. And I wish more people would be open about sharing some of this. And because ultimately, I think if we have these conversations and we address the fact that, there is a stigma behind disordered eating that shouldn't be there, more people will be open and more people can get help. And ultimately, that's your goal. That's my goal, is to help other people. And yeah, just again, really appreciate you being on here and for this opportunity that we've had to chat. I always love leaving the listeners with a weekly quote, and you sent yours over to me. I have it pulled up, but I'd love it if you do you have it up? Are you able to read that?
Yeah. So the quote that I had sent, and Brett asked me what my favorite quote was, and this is the first one that came to my mind, but I love it. It's from More Than a Body by Lexi and Lindsay Kite, who did their PhDs in positive body image and what that actually means and looks like for people. And this is a quote: "Positive body image isn't believing your body looks good. It is knowing your body is good, regardless of how it looks." And I just think it's super powerful because, we can just do so much more if we're focused on the things that we actually need to do to be successful, right? Instead of the way we look. Sometimes we hold ourselves back, like, oh, I don't look like a CEO. I don't look like a fast runner. I don't look like, there's a million other things. But if you want it, go do it and see if you can, right? Doing it is much better. And, when we focus on what our body can do, it's so much better than, focusing on what our body does look like. So being content with that is the goal. So.
That's great. And it's a great place to wrap up, I think, because it ultimately embodies the getting after it mindset. Go try something that you're nervous to try, or go do something, like you said, take action and just start. I love that. So thank you for sharing that. Again, thank you so much for being here. And if anyone wants to follow you on social media, like you mentioned, I'll put it all in the show notes, like your Instagram, your LinkedIn, your website, but anywhere else that people should know about, if they want to continue following you or anything like that?
I'm technically on TikTok, but I mostly just do Instagram. So if you want to follow me, I have 4 posts on there right now, but Instagram is very full. So Instagram is definitely the place to go. Awesome.
Well, like I said, I'll link it there, and go follow Jackie. And if you need some help with your diet and anything, you can sign up there's a consultation on your website, right, that people can sign up for, and go do it. She's a great resource. And thanks again for being on. And to everyone else out there, just keep getting after it. Go after your goals and don't be scared. Dream big. Thanks again for everyone for listening, and we'll catch you guys soon.